Welcome back, everyone, to a brand new episode of the Athletes Roundtable. This podcast is brought to you by Athleisure Productions, the best place to find Iona highlight reels, podcasts, and much more. Today, we are joined by head coach of the volleyball team,
Andy Mueller.
All right, Mr. Mueller, how many years have you been head coach?
It's just my first season. Just wrapped up my first season here at Iona. 14th season overall, coaching college ball, though.
So, first season, how would you describe this first season at Iona?
It's been tremendous. It really, really has. I mean, getting hired just a few weeks before the season started. Kind of coming in blind on a lot of levels. I mean, doing the best we can to get our homework done ahead of time. But I was really impressed with the level of dedication that our student athletes had, just with the general level of volleyball skills that they had already, the amount of support that the athletic department and the university as a whole really supported the team. So, as the dust kind of settles from our season finishing about 10, 14 days ago now, I think we're probably ahead of where I thought maybe we would be, which is exciting, which means we can kind of push a little bit harder, kind of going into the short-term future here.
How was the hiring process?
Fast. I think that's kind of by necessity a little bit, I mean, the previous head coach, I think notified them around, like mid-June or early June that he was going to be, moving on from Iona. I kind of had caught wind of it just through the coaching network, our back channels that we've all got plugged into, and so I think I had my first interview mid to late June and accepted the job like July 12th. So yeah, it was fast, which was good for me for a lot of reasons, but I think most importantly it showed like how much of a priority that the department had in this position, and not to rush it, but to make sure that they were really like finding the right candidates, asking the right questions. It showed that like they cared, which I know sounds really cliche, but it matters. It really does.
Now, was this your first head coaching experience?
At the Division I level, yeah. I'd been a D3 head coach before, and I've been a long-time head coach at the club youth level. So 1 year as a D3 head coach, 9 years as a club youth head coach, primarily with high school age student athletes. So not terribly much younger than what we have here at Iona, but yeah, first crack at D1.
Would you have changed anything from your first year?
It's a great question. We're having player meetings right now, and we've asked a very similar question to some of our student athletes. I really don't think that we would have changed much, to be honest. We had such a short runway kind of leading up to the season because of my hire and just the way that college volleyball works. We can't have them here during the summer, so it's like they get here on, I think they got here on August 10th. Or no, got here on August 8th. We were practicing on August 10th. And then we were competing on August 24th, so we had like 14 days to like, I didn't have enough time, or it wasn't really, it would have been a useful experience to me to think about the things that we could have done differently, because like it was just days over, bam, let's go to the next day. And that's kind of how we operated for like 4 months in a row. Yeah.
And especially the beginning of the season, you guys went on like a winning streak. So
yeah. So yeah, for sure. I think the way we started, I was like, well, okay, we'll just keep rolling. Don't want to mess it up. Just don't get in the way, coach. That's what I kept reminding myself. Don't get in the way. Yeah.
So for the first time since 2018, you guys made it to the MAC championships, the MAC tournament. Mm-hmm. How did that feel?
I mean, it felt great. It's always it's a really cool thing that the MAC conference does as a whole, where once every 4 years, all 10 teams that play volleyball get to go to the tournament. So we knew that coming into the season, but we just used that as extra motivation to set our goals higher than that. Just making the tournament was never going to be enough for us, even in a year where everyone made it. You don't want to be the 10th team out of 10. Yeah. And so for us, we had really specific goals. We wanted to be a top 4 seed going into the MAC tournament, and to be the 3 seed, especially with this team that just as recently as the 2021 season finished in 7th place. As recently as August of 2022, we were picked 6th. So to kind of double our preseason ranking, that was really, really important to us. I think it was a lot of validation for what the athletes have been doing all year. So yeah, I think that going into the MACs, we certainly had a lot of good momentum, and ran into a really, really good Quinnipiac team. Played good enough to win. Genuinely played good enough to win. We lost sets 1 and 3, 23-25 both. So those sets could have gone either way. We won the second set 25-21. So we almost you almost played good enough to sweep them. But at the end of the day, that's a really experienced, really senior-driven team, and they obviously got hot. They're playing Wisconsin tonight in the NCAA tournament. Yeah, at Wisconsin. So that'll be we're excited. We want them to do well. Obviously, we want them to represent the conference for us well. But yeah, it'll be a really good test for them to go up against. I think one of the Wisconsin middles is 6'8". I think the other one's 6'7". So yeah, it'll be good. It'll be good to see what the MAC champion can do on that national level.
Wow.
Watching them play in that type of level, how do you and the team take that into next year's motivation?
Well, I think we know that we can be successful against any team in the MAC. When we look at Quinnipiac specifically, we played them tight in every match. I think every match was a 4-setter. We were successful the first time from a win-loss standpoint. We lost at home in 4 sets, and we lost in 4 sets, a tight 4 sets in the MAC championship. So, when you watch a team like that go up against some of the best teams in the country, you know that if you can, there's a bit of like a transitive property at play, right? It's like, oh, well, you're successful against opponent A is successful against opponent B. You can really quickly sort of, convince yourself that you would have had similar success. I think the degree of separation there is pretty razor thin, though. And so for us, it's just more about, having the mental confidence. But after that, it's like, you got to work on your skills. We were chatting last night in our team text. University of Georgia played last night. They beat, I don't remember who off the top of my head, unfortunately, but they played their first round NCAA game. We went up to Boston the third weekend of the year. We took the first set off of Georgia. We won the first set of Georgia 25-21, and they kind of righted the ship pretty quickly. We lost a tight second set, and then things kind of unraveled for us. But it's certainly a really cool experience watching the NCAA tournament, and not just saying, oh, well, look, there's Quinnipiac, who, we beat in a match, but also we beat in multiple sets. It's cool to watch them, but it's cool to watch us, watch other teams that we played. To be able to say, oh, yeah, we played like multiple NCAA tournament teams, and not only did we play them, but we were, relatively to moderately successful against them. That's got to give us a lot of confidence going into training. But it's really like, can we take that mental and that emotional victory? Can we stretch that out over the next 9 months worth of off-season training? That'll be the challenge for us.
So this year you're going to be losing a couple key players, like to seniors. That just happens every year. How do you feel about the team moving forward into next year with those losses?
Yeah, listen, our graduates have been just absolutely incredible ambassadors for this team, especially Julia Thomas and Sam Duran, who were recruited by one coach back when they were high school recruits. They played for a second coach for the first 3 years of their career, and they kind of finished up with me now this year. Those two especially, have been through a lot, and so for them to be able to have the kind of the tail end of their careers the way they did, just again speaks volumes for their maturity and how hard they work. Losing Lily Thomas as a DS libero, Emma Jacobs as an outside hitter. She's only a junior, but she's graduating early, and we're excited for her to potentially move on and maybe go to grad school somewhere. And then, Fleur Wierschma, who I was fortunate enough to coach her freshman year at the school that we were both last at. It's a lot of big pieces. So certainly not easy shoes to fill, but we'll return about 13 or 14 out of that group, which is a pretty good size number. And we've got some early commits for next year already. And so I think the team's shaping up to be good. We'll even with losing some key players there, we return a lot of the starting lineup. And the starting lineup that we do return is going to be very upper class heavy. We'll have a lot of juniors, a lot of seniors, a lot of people who are on the court with us this past year. So, I may be shooting myself in the foot here, but in 9 months, I certainly feel like it's as good as we were in 2022. I do feel like 2023 we should be able to, find another level and maybe push even deeper into a postseason run.
So you guys were 10-18 last year, and then you guys now are 17-12 this year. How are you seeking to improve the team next year as well?
Well, I'll be honest. We don't really tend to look at it a ton from a win-loss standpoint. I think I've been doing this long enough, guys, that the results come with being as process-driven as we can, whether that's in our training sessions, and strength and conditioning sessions, during our matches, obviously as well. So I think for us, it's just like saying, okay, like not to oversimplify things, but it's get to 25 points before your opponent by 2, and the way we score 25 points in our games is aces, kills, and blocks. So definitely putting a premium on doing the things in our gym to reinforce our ability to get those aces, our ability to get those kills, our ability to get those blocks. Obviously, it's such an incredibly fascinating, incredibly fast-paced, nuanced game. So there's a whole lot of things that we can do that isn't an ace, a kill, or a block, but can massively affect our ability and increase our chances of getting those point scoring opportunities. So, we've got to score more points at the end of the day, which is something that I told the team when I first got hired, that like we got to score more points, and we took a huge step this year. I mean, I think off the top of my head, last year we scored about 11.75 points per set, and that number jumped up to about 13.5 this year. So huge step in the right direction. I mean, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but our goal is to continue to push that number higher and higher. The better you are at scoring points, it means the other team has to play almost a perfect game to beat you. And even then, they may play darn well. And if you just play better, we want people to play a great game against us, lose 3-0, and then walk out of high and scratching their head, being like, how did that just happen? Like, we just played great and they swept us. So we're not there yet, but that's certainly what we're pushing towards.
So you were talking earlier about getting recruits and people that are committing to Iona. What do you look for as a coach? What do you look for in like high schoolers or other players across college to get them here?
Yeah, that's a good question. So first and foremost, it has to be high character people, absolutely high character people. Playing D1 ball is not for everybody. It absolutely isn't. There are a tremendous amount of playing opportunities for people at all different levels. Playing D1 ball in New York with the fast-paced environment that this city provides is also not for everybody. So we try to stress that to our recruits quite a bit and let them know that this is going to be hard. We're certainly going to have our good days and bad days. That's life in general. But I think starting with high character people, people who have a high amount of integrity, mean what they say what they mean. It's so vitally important to me. I firmly believe that me and my staff, we can train you in volleyball. That piece, we can train just about anybody to do just about anything. There's no doubt about that in my mind. To train people to be high character, that's you gotta kind of have that at least to some extent already. It's certainly a learned behavior that we'll work on developing with these individuals once they get a part of our program. They'll certainly benefit from our strong culture from those perspectives. But yeah, I don't want to have to worry about whether or not people are going to class or not going to class, or cheating on exams or stealing things from like that stuff. I don't have any time or business with that. So that has to be kind of like the first vetting procedure for us. And then after that you got to be able to play. I mean, it's such a niche sport. We're always looking to fill niches, and it's sometimes as easy enough to say, okay, well, here's who we're graduating, here's what we're losing. So 1-for-1 exchange. We got to go find. We're graduating 2 middles. Let's go recruit 2 middles. Well, we also have middles that are already in our program that are busting their butt every day. I don't know if we need to go find 2 middles. The best people to replace our starters might already be in our program. So I think that's just the benefit of being in our program, is you get a chance to learn and grow and be a part of it.
So how did you first get into volleyball?
Yeah, it's a great question. I do have a pretty nice little story here. So I grew up in the Midwest, where we were fortunate enough to have boys high school volleyball. I know it's not the case everywhere, so I certainly appreciated that. Big basketball player growing up. I grew up in Illinois in the 90s, so the Bulls were they were my jam. I was a kid in my parents' basement watching some of those multiple three-peats they were having. So a big basketball person. We moved to Missouri. In my high school, my first year, my freshman year, all of the spring sports, which volleyball was a spring sport for us on the boys' side, all the spring sports had tryouts all on the same day. So it was, track and field, same day. It was boys volleyball, golf, tennis, and baseball. I love baseball, but I can't play baseball to save my life, right? I love it, but I can't play it. And so, playing basketball, I was a pretty serious basketball player growing up. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna run like track and field. Mostly like more the field events, some long jump, some triple jump, some high jump. Work on my vertical. My best friend was a runner, so I was like, oh great, I'll go do this. And the volleyball coach had been working on me like for weeks. He would like see me in the hallway. I was, at 15 years old, I was like 6'1", probably like $150. Like I was just skin and bones at that point, but I was tall, right? And I didn't really have any interest in playing volleyball. And I was like, he just kept working on me. Mueller, you gonna come out? I'm like, I don't know, man. Like volleyball dudes are weird. Like they're kind of like, they're a good group, but like something's a little off with them, And I think it was like I had the realization we had like 8 periods in the day, and I think it was like towards the end of the 7th period, and this just like epiphany came over me. I was like, I don't want to run track and field. I hate running. I was like, why would I do that? I was like, if I'm gonna do track and field just like for the jumping, why don't I just like jump in volleyball? Like, and it's a court sport, so it's like almost a 1-for-1 exchange for what I was doing on the basketball court. So I showed up. Made varsity as a freshman. I had no idea what I was doing. Volleyball was admittedly a very different sport back then. It has changed a lot in the, almost 20 years since that fateful day. But like most great things, totally kind of by accident, and it's just been like the best decision I ever made.
Did you play in college as well?
I did, yeah. So I played. I grew up in a suburb of St. Louis. So there's at the time was an NAI school there called Lindenwood University. Talk about growing and changing. That school has gone in about last 15 years from NAIA to D2 to this year they're playing D1 in the Ohio Valley Conference. Wow. So I don't claim that I played D1 ball. I played NAIA ball, right? But yeah, I went to Lindenwood University and played there for a couple years, and then went to the big state school in Missouri, University of Missouri, and then I played a little bit of club there, but they didn't have like a varsity sponsored sport there.
Gotcha. Would you claim that you were the one that brought the school to D1?
Oh gosh, no, I can't do that either. Unfortunately, I can't do that either. There was some really, really great. I played with some great teammates though. Some guys that were doing some things on the volleyball court that were just unbelievable. I mean, guys that were like jumping and their heads were like a foot above the net. And I think one of my favorite things about the NAIA, though, I mean, I played NAIA. And then my first coaching stop was NAIA. So the recruiting things were a little bit different back then for the NAIA division. There wasn't necessarily like an NAIA clearinghouse, so we'd see a lot more influx of international student athletes. But even even my freshman year at Lindenwood, we were, I was 18, 19 years old, something like that. And we had, guys from Haiti, and we had guys from Hawaii, which obviously not international, but very different than the U.S. and certainly very different than Middle America, Missouri, no doubt about that. So it was really like probably my first like eye-opening experience at just experiencing different cultures and hearing different languages and different ways of thinking, and I do really think that was like kind of the start of my sort of like foundational path to now like just being in New York and being at a school like Iona and having international student athletes on our team right now. Just right before this, I had a Zoom call with a Turkish recruit, hence the 8-hour time difference of trying to make that work a little bit. So yeah, it was certainly very foundational. It's kind of who I am now. So
what made you want to be a head coach?
I mean, just one less boss. Doesn't everyone just want one less boss at the end of the day? That's a good question. It certainly seemed to be the next evolution for me as a coach. I had been doing this, like I said, before this year. I've been doing this for 13 years. Of those 13 years, 12 of them have been an assistant. So I think I've been doing this for long enough that it kind of felt like I was, I don't know if crossroads is the right word, but I was certainly at this point where, okay, I've been doing this for a while. I really like it. I love it. I'm obsessed with it. I'm decently good at it, all right? So a lot of people in my position would say, okay, well, do I continue this assistant path and just try to go work at higher and higher level schools. You know, I was in the NEC for 6 years prior to this. Do I try to go and maybe go be an assistant coach in like in the Big East or you know, the American Athletic Conference? Can I hang in the SEC or the Big Ten or something like that and kind of work my way up, right? Or do I just kind of stay at this level from a volleyball standpoint, but make the jump from being an assistant coach to a head coach? You know, I think ultimately my quality of life is very important to me. My spouse's quality of life and what she does for a living is very important to me. So it's more about, okay, like can I have a vertical? Is there a vertical move here in my career that allows me to stay in New York, that allows me to still, you know, have a new opportunity to improve on my skills? And so when the opportunity came up at Iona, it was a really good fit on so many levels.
So I've got a little stat here.
Yeah. Okay.
So I believe it was your first time coaching, not head coaching, but being a part of a coaching team.
Yeah.
You were 119-3.
Yeah.
Walk me through that.
Yeah. So that was Columbia College. Columbia College in Columbia, Missouri, where I ended up graduating from. And again, a great story, just kind of by accident. You know, I was going to school there. I was about to turn 21, so certainly a young man for sure. And I knew a couple of players on the volleyball team just from being like in the same town as them, playing beach tournaments with them, all that sort of stuff. And one of the players said, you know, do you coach volleyball as well? And I said, no, I just love playing. I played, you know, in college, playing growing up. And she said, oh, well, you should come talk to like our head coach and see if maybe they need a new assistant. And I was like, all right, well, like, are you guys good? Like, I mean, not that that's what it comes down to, but like, you know, you want to, if you're going to invest your time and your energy in something, you want to feel like that investment pays off in some capacity, you know? And she's like, yeah, we can play. I was like, okay. I mean, turns out she was just like massively underselling it, right? So we're at Columbia College. We're playing the NAIA. The NAIA's postseason is like a little bit different. You still have like the automatic qualifiers like we do at the D1 level. So, you know, like if you win the MAC, you get the automatic bid to go to the NCAA tournament. But, you know, there's some at-large bids, all this sort of stuff. So, yeah, fast forward and we're dominant. You know, we've got Brazilians and Kenyans and Serbians and Canadians and Colombians on this team, mixed in with, you know, just like hardworking but kind of boring Midwesterners. As a boring Midwesterner, like I have no shame in saying that, you know. So like just an incredible mix and a very eclectic mix of people. And my first year there, we had a really unfortunate injury right before we left for the national tournament, where our best players injured her thumb. So we didn't quite make it as far as we wanted to that first year. That second year, we make this ridiculous run. We were good that year, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if we thought we were going to be that good. In the semifinals, we beat this team from Tennessee that was 32-0, and they were like, you know, talking all their trash before the game, and then we swept them, played like probably one of the best games of our lives, and you end up losing in the national championship that year. But our Brazilian setter won Player of the Year. I mean, she was an unbelievable player. And then so after 3 years, it was like, you know, I'm filling out resumes and I'm sending applications after that third year. And I'm like, you know, I'd only been doing this for 3 years, so it's not like my resume really didn't really have that much on there. And I was like, well, what was my record? And I was like, really? I was like, okay, all right. So yeah, lots of All-Americans and lots of, you know, Player of the Year stuff. And Columbia College now is they're the winningest program in the history of that entire division. Won like 1,300 games in their, you know, 25, 30 year history. So they're about as dominant as it gets, which is really cool to be a part of that. And just even to have like 3 years to be able to like lay claim to that was really, really cool.
What is one major difference you faced transitioning into being a head coach for Iona compared to other teams you coached previously?
That's a good question. I think it's all about, it's just a lot more individual conversations. It's sort of a lot more meetings. I mean, I've been fortunate that even as an assistant coach or at my previous school at LIU as an assistant head coach. So, even at those places though, I've gotten a chance to work with some really great people that allowed me to be a part of those meetings, whether that's, meetings with administration about budgetary items or travel or budgets or all those pieces, allowed me to be a part of individual player meetings, which I thought was so valuable. So before I was quote unquote in the room, but I was a secondary piece to that room. I was just sort of more observing, whereas now I'm in these meetings, I'm running these meetings, I'm doing all that stuff. So it's just being the same thing that I was doing before, just much more of an active participant in those meetings. And it's surprised me how much I enjoy it. I tell my staff all the time, which I'm so lucky to have them, but I tell my staff, like, it's kind of like, it's this idea of constant gardening. Okay, like, we can't just like be running around with like weed eater, just like spraying pesticides on like perfectly healthy plants and flowers and then like killing them. You can't just like, you can't go nuts over things if things are going well, but at the same time, if you just ignore your garden for a month at a time, you come back in, you're like, oh my gosh, it is overran with weeds. And then you have to like, maybe burn off the whole lot and start fresh, so you got to take that constant gardening approach. And I think when you do that, like I said, it requires a lot more of those individual conversations, a lot more conversations with student athletes. They're a great group. They love coming into the office and chatting with me and my assistant coaches. We'll talk before practice. We'll talk after practice. It's just a lot more off the court than I think I was probably used to before. But again, I'm fortunate that we get to work with absolutely just incredible people. So it's never a chore. It's like, it's fun. I like talking to them. They're a good, funny, hardworking group. So it takes a lot of time, but it's time worth spent in my mind.
Were there any moments this season that made you take a step back and realize how far you've come, and to now be head coach at Iona University? Sorry.
Yeah, we're all still getting used to it. It's a good question. Honestly, not a ton. Again, part of that was just kind of the way I operate. It's a lot of tunnel vision. I'm so invested in those 4 months. I mean, trust me, guys, the number of weddings, babies, funerals, and such that I've missed in the last 14 years are too many to count, and those are painful things to miss for sure. But it's such an all-in time of year for me that I don't really give myself an opportunity to kind of zoom out and really evaluate things from a comprehensive standpoint, kind of until about this time of year, until after the season's over. But there's definitely some moments during the year that certainly made me, very proud of the team. I think probably beating Marist over in Bronxville at our auxiliary gym was like a really great moment. Just the manner in which that victory came to fruition. They're a darn good team. They were number 2 in the MAX this year. We went down 0-2 in sets and kind of stormed back, and that was probably the only time I was very, very close to shedding some tears. The team says I have a pretty good poker face. They can't really quite read me, which is obviously by design. That match was great. I mean, even the first match of the year, we're playing Providence, a really, talented team coming out of the Big East, and we lose the first set 25-16 of the season at home. And you're like, oh gosh, okay, what are we getting into here? And for the team to kind of like really rally behind that and really continue to trust that the work that we've been doing up to that point, which again, that was like only 3 weeks worth of like us being a team, for the most part, for them to like, have some adversity early on and then bounce back, win the next 3 sets. It was like, oh, we've got something here. What we have, it was still undefined at that point in, late August, but okay, we've got something here. So that was definitely a really, really good opportunity for us.
Why did you choose to come to Iona?
Oh, I love this question. My recruit asked me this question just this morning. So, a lot of the things that our recruits look at in coming here, that's what I look at. So like, how are they supported by the coaching staff? How are they supported by academic support from the university? What are the things that we can do to help them be successful? These are all things that as at the time the potential head coach, I wanted to know about these things. How are they going to support me? How they're going to help support my staff? like I said before, the ability to stay in New York. My spouse works in publishing. Her office is in Lower Manhattan. We live in Brooklyn, so the ability to do all of these things, and yes, it was a bit of a lifestyle change. I was walking to LIU 15 minutes each way, which was obviously a blessing, and so it's a bit of a longer commute now. So it was a lifestyle change, but it didn't require relocation. When we moved from Missouri to New York, that was big. That was at 25 years old. That was a huge change. So a little bit different of a change, but the ability to do that and be able to have that vertical career move, I thought was really, really good. Kind of what sold it for me was really just starting to interact with the student athletes and being able to kind of get a better idea of where they're at, what their expectations were for themselves. You always want to come in and be successful, but that's such like a catch-all phrase, and how we're going to define success was always something that we talk a lot to the team about. Is we have goals from a win-loss standpoint for sure. We have success-driven goals, but we have a lot of goals that have nothing to do with what we do on the court. We're continuing to push this semester and for the year as a whole to be, one of the top GPAs within the MAC conference, also one of the top GPAs within Iona athletics as a whole, which is a challenge with like 20 plus sports, right? So being able to do those things, I think is a good sort of benchmark to say, okay, here's where we're at. We already crossed one of those off by saying we wanted to be a top 4 seed, and we were number 3 seed. We said we wanted to have some individual accolades for our student athletes, whether that was a player of the year, a rookie of the year, a libero of the year. We checked one of those off with Hope Matchner winning libero of the year a couple weeks ago. So we've certainly hit a lot of those benchmarks already. But I think being able to work with the student athletes that were a part of this program, while being able to know that we're going to have the support to be able to improve upon the student athletes we have in our program. And towards the end of my interview process, I remember sitting down with Matt Glavossi, our athletic director, and just kind of laid it out there and just said, listen, I'm a first-time D1 head coach. I'm gonna make mistakes. I want to be in a place that understands that can support that. That if I come into Matt's office or Jamie Fogarty, our senior women's administrator, if I come into any administrator's office, they're going to be an ear that will listen a little bit and offer sometimes constructive criticism on what I'm doing so we can grow, but just support in general, and that has been true from day one.
What are your future goals in the next few years with this team, of course, but also beyond?
I mean, I want to get this team back to a MAC championship. We had a MAC championship back in 2018. This team is not that far removed from that. Now there's no more team members a part of that. We have Cass Patsos, who's a graduate assistant coach for us right now, who was a freshman during that 2018 championship season. So she has an idea. She's kind of the last piece of the DNA from that team. But every year is going to be different. We win a championship in 2023, and if we try to repeat that in 2024, it'll be a different concoction. It'll be different ingredients, because even if it's the same people, we're going to grow and evolve and change from year one. So getting back to that championship contender status is really, really important. It's going to be a really good sign of some linear growth here, that the program is improving from year to year. I think this year we probably benefited, especially early on, and catching people some off guard and thinking that we weren't going to be as good as we were. We don't have that benefit next year, which is good. I want this big old target on our back. I want people to come into Hines and give us their best shot, and then when they walk out with an L, be like, dang, okay, they're for real, So that gives us some mental edge if we have to play them a second time or maybe even a third time in the MAC championship. As far as like for me, from a personal standpoint, I mean, my goals are in line with the team's goals. I mean, I came to Iona saying I'm gonna be here until I get a championship, and then we'll go from there. But we don't necessarily talk about multi-year stuff or timeline stuff. I mean, I've got a great bunch of athletes to work with right now. We've got tremendous staff. We have tremendous support. I'm really excited about the couple of recruits we've got coming in next year. And like I said, next year definitely feels like a year that we can, make a serious run at this thing.
So what would you say is the biggest factor for getting the team to win the MAC tournament?
I think right now, probably consistency. I think we got to get back to, we definitely demonstrated that we can play the game at a really, really high level this year against really high level teams. So as we look into, as we're sort of basically transitioning now into sort of our off-season phase, we've got 9 months basically until we step on the court again from a competitive standpoint. We got a lot of practice hours in our gym from that time, but we also have a lot of time off the court together. That was probably the one thing that, that's probably the one thing that we didn't have a lot of time to work on this year was some of our more culture-driven activities, because we were just on the court so much and we had to install a bunch of offensive and defensive systems to make the team functional. As we go forward into the spring, it's okay, what are we doing on the court that makes us better, but also what are we doing off the court that makes us better? What are some of the bonding activities that we can do? What are some of the trust exercises that we can do to make sure that when push comes to shove and we need a big rally late in the game, or we need to close out a quality opponent on the road, things that are really, really difficult to do in every conference, but especially ours that has so much parity in our conference. Those are investments, those are seeds we got to plant now, because once the fall hits and we're trying to integrate new players and we're trying to install new systems and do all these things, it might be just too complex for us to be able to do, again, consistently. So, consistency is definitely going to be the key for us, especially in this next, again, about 6 to 9 months in our off-season phase.
What are your biggest inspirations as a volleyball coach, but also in life?
Wow, what a good question. I don't really think about my inspirations a bunch. I think there's some incredible coaches. There's some incredible athletes doing some really great things out there. I'll be honest with you, I am constantly impressed and I look up to a lot of the people on the women's national soccer team. Soccer, not football. I know, I get it. It's controversial. Okay. But I think what they are doing from a competitive standpoint, when they're on the field, they are like one of the most dominant teams in the history of their sport, right? So that's like impressive alone. And then what they do to fight for equal pay in their sport. I don't know if you guys saw, but when the men's national team advanced to the knockout stage earlier this week, they get like a bonus, okay? And because of all the contract bargaining and all the contract negotiations that the men's national team and the women's national team had with the U.S. Soccer Federation, the women get an equal share. The women's national team gets an equal share of that knockout stage bonus, basically. And these numbers may be slightly inaccurate off the top of my head, but I want to say it was something like the equal share is each women's national team member gets something like 600,000, or maybe it was only 300,000, something like that. But the crazy number was that was like 3 times the amount that they received for winning the World Cup. Like that's crazy to me. So I think they are just like massively inspiring. I think there's a lot of great coaches in our sport, especially, that I think are really, really great. One of my mentors is Kevin Hambley, who is now the head coach at Stanford University women's volleyball team. I met him a decade or so ago, back when he was a head coach at University of Illinois, and sat in on some panels that he was on. And I think that, the way he approaches the game, the way he approaches, again, not trying to hide the fact that, being a man and coaching a women's college volleyball team, we don't really make a big deal out of it because it doesn't need to be, but there are differences there. There are things, but at the end of the day, like they're volleyball players and they're student athletes at Iona, and that's how we need to treat them. So I just think, looking at it from an equality standpoint, looking at people that are fighting for equality, whether that's, the women's soccer team and your equal pay, or you're, Kevin Hambley and you're just looking at student athletes as student athletes, I think we need to be, continuing to monitor their academic success, obviously their volleyball success, their ability to have, positive impact on their mental health. I think all that is like just so paramount.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. This has been the Athletes Roundtable with Jordan and Ryan. Next week, we'll be back with a brand new show, and it is our season finale, so please stay tuned. Again, this is Ryan.
Jordan.
Signing off.